Okay, thank you, Chandan. So I think this is going to be the only experimental talk all day. So it will probably be a little different from the talks that you've been hearing so far. So I'll be telling you about some studies we did very recently where we made our own particles. We are very proud of it because we've never really done chemistry. Okay, so we wanted to see how you pack soft deformable particles and how these soft deformable particles, when packed at really high concentrations, how they approach the non-ergodic state. Okay, so we learned how to make highly polydispersed microparticles of controlled polydispersity, and then we did a lot of rheology to see how these particles jam. So if you look behind, these are the particles that we created. So these are hydrogel particles. It is basically a polymeric, it's polymers of these materials that are called isopropyl acrylamide. Okay, and most of the work were done by these people, Sanjay Behera, my PhD student, Paramesh Gadige, who's a postdoc working in our laboratory, and Devashish Shaha, my old PhD student, who's now a postdoc in Dusseldorf. Okay, so because this is a short talk, one has to be a little organized. So I'm going to quickly give you an introduction where I'm going to introduce you to some terms that I'll be needing, like the glass transition, fragility, dynamical heterogeneity, thermoreversibility, etc. Then I'll tell you how we synthesized our, how we synthesized our highly polydispersed p-NiPAM microparticles. So the particles that I showed you in the last slide, so these particles, as you can see, they are highly polydispersed. It's rather disordered. It's in a glassy phase. And the mean size of these particles is about 1 micron. Okay, so I'll tell you how we synthesize these and how we control the polydispersity. So our polydispersities, we managed to control minutely between 15 and 49%. I'll tell you how we define our polydispersity index. I've got to stop pressing the wrong button. I'll tell you how we characterize the size distribution of these particles and how we decided, well, that these were stiff particles. We did that by measuring this quantity called thermoresponsivity. We did rheology. We looked at the flow and deformation of these materials to study their glass formation dynamics, in particular the effects of polydispersity on the glass formation. And then I'll conclude. So you know that glasses are ubiquitous, they are all around you. You have window glasses, you have metallic glasses here. The CD where you write your data, that is a polycarbonate plastic, okay? So glasses are very useful. Closer to, well, I mean, right outside, I mean, this is my first traffic analogy for a glassy system in Bangalore, okay? Disordered, metastable, everything is stuck, kinetically constrained. In the laboratory, you can also make glasses. Okay, so this colloidal glass that you see here, this is basically a polydispersed, it's a closely packed assembly of polydispersed colloidal particles. Okay, so there's really no order as such, unlike in a colloidal crystal where all the particles were the same size and you could make, as in here, you have made a very nice hexagonal lattice. And of course, colloidal glasses are formed only when you increase the volume fraction. At lower volume fractions, you get other phases like liquids, you get liquid glass coexistence and so on if you have finite polydispersity. So I think you'll see a lot more of these curves today. So if you take a glass forming material like say silica that I showed you in the last slide, and if you suddenly quench the temperature at a very fast rate, then you're going to see that the viscosity of this material, this glass forming material, will rise very abruptly within a few degrees centigrade, okay? In this case, you can see that the viscosity is rising over about 14 decades, and all this is happening over 10 degrees, okay? So there are two ways in which viscosity can rise depending on the material you're looking at. As you're decreasing the temperature very fast, it can either form and it can either show an Arrhenius dependence with 1/T, or it can be faster than Arrhenius, okay? So the Arrhenius dependence is what is called strong behavior, and the faster than Arrhenius is what is called fragile behavior, okay? And most of these glass forming materials, they fall either in this class or in this. Now you can get a similar behavior even in colloidal glasses, and the reason why we like using colloidal glasses is because they are so easy to make and use. But in colloids, of course, colloidal suspensions, you don't quite have a temperature, but you do have a volume fraction. So instead of inverse of temperature, that was the control parameter here. In glasses, if you increase the volume fraction, you can get the viscosity to rise very quickly and very similarly, though not as much as in the molecular glasses. Okay, so it depends on the material, right? So here you've normalized it by the glass transition temperature, so it can be a wide range. But the crux of the matter is that all the action where, this very steep rise that is happening, I'm more interested in fragile glasses, that happens over a very, very narrow temperature range. But these are all different materials. You scale the x-axis by the glass transition temperature, so that's why you have collapsed data points. So you get the same thing for colloidal glasses, though the change in viscosity, in this case the relaxation time, is not as dramatic as here. Okay, and these are parameters that are actually very easy to measure in the laboratory. Okay, so good. So this is the Arrhenius dependence of viscosity on inverse temperature. This is what is called a Vogel-Fulcher-Tammern dependence. D is a quantity that is known as fragility. Okay, fragility parameter, we'll come back to that later. You can do a similar kind of a fit to the colloidal glasses where you just replace T by 1/5. Okay, and you get the same kind of strong as well as fragile behavior. Okay, so again, you can use the Vogel-Fulcher-Tammern equation to model your colloidal data. This is not my data, this is data that was published in this paper a few years ago. People have been looking at colloidal suspensions and seeing how changing volume fractions gives you a sequence of phases. So in the absence of any polydispersity, the top line here shows you the kind of the phases that you'll get as you increase the volume fraction. And the bottom line is what you'd get if there is some amount of polydispersity. So as you can see, as you increase the polydispersity, as you increase the polydispersity, you can form glasses. So fragility, I told you that some of these glasses were fragile, and you can explain the fragility by considering dynamical heterogeneities, which are basically these cooperative rearranging regions of fast and slow particles. I have to go quickly now, so I'll just quickly give you my second traffic analogy, which is a train compartment. You can see that near the door here, there are people who are moving cooperatively but faster, but far away from the door, they are slow, almost kinetically arrested. Okay, so you have these regions where you have particles moving fast and slow and cooperatively, and this becomes slower and slower as you approach the glass transition. Okay, so what we did here was we used our own synthesis, we used some synthetic chemistry to make particles over a wide range of polydispersities. Okay, so I'm not going to go into these details at all, but I'm going to tell you that we used something called free radical precipitation polymerization, which involved adding ingredients at certain rates. And what we found was that once things are added and stirred and everything done properly, you get these hydrogels, which are basically like polymers that are, forming a ball. Okay, so these are the polymer networks that you see here. And in the undeformed state, these are pretty spherical. Okay, but when you pack these more and more, they start deforming because these are very soft particles. Okay, so these are homogeneously cross-linked p-NiPAM particles. We define the polydispersity index as the ratio of the mean size to the width of the size distribution. So these things we've all measured. And what we find is that the PDI, the polydispersity index of these microparticles, they increase as you decrease the flow rate at which you add a monomer cross-linker as well as a co-monomer into the solution. Okay? So having done that, we have this very wide range of polydispersities that we've been able to make. So this is what happens to p-NiPAM when you decrease the temperature. So at low temperatures, it imbibes a lot of water, swells up into these micron-sized balls, and that's where it forms these very transparent suspensions. So this is an aqueous suspension. At higher temperatures, it releases water because of the hydrophobic effect, and it collapses. Okay, so you see the same sphere has become much smaller here. Okay, so here you can actually modulate the temperature and you can get the material to jam, okay, at a constant volume fraction of the material. Okay, So can't go into all this, but what I can tell you is, we've done these. So this is thermoreversible, which means as you first decrease the temperature, then you increase it back again, you're going to get the same kind of a plot. Okay, now we found that you get the identical plots no matter what your polydispersity index is of the microparticles, which basically means that the stiffnesses of all these particles are constant. So you have only one parameter that you're changing here, which is the polydispersity, and we want to see how the packing changes as you change the polydispersity, stiffness being constant. So we've of course made all these measurements, but I can't quite talk to you about them in one more minute because I haven't really started talking about the data. So here we have measured all the, the different polydispersities, and we see that depending on how you synthesize your material, polydispersities go between about 5% all the way up to 50%. And you can see this, so this is the size distribution of our particles that we made. We've done the same thing using scanning electron microscopy, where we put the particles, dried particles on a plate, which is a conducting plate. We bombard electrons, look at the signal on the other side, and we've been able to recreate these images. So this is with flow rates decreasing. And we've looked at 1,000 particles at a time, and we've calculated the similar size distribution as we did for the light scattering experiments above, and this is what we saw. Okay, so similar. So as you decrease the flow rate, you're able to achieve this huge change in polydispersity indices. Then we did a lot of rheology. I'm not going to go into all the details for obvious reasons, but then we calculated a relative viscosity of all these suspensions, okay, at different volume fractions. Here you cannot quite use volume fraction because these are soft particles that deform. So we use something called an effective volume fraction, which is our control parameter here. So, these protocols have been done to death, and I'm happy to talk to you about it later on. So we've used the Bachelor's equation to calculate the concentration of polymers and so on and so forth. I'll really finish in 1 minute. Yeah. And then we calculated the relative viscosities, and we plotted them versus the effective volume fractions, and this is basically, this is hundreds and hundreds of data points that you see here, and for different PDIs, okay, and then we fit it to the Vogel-Fulcher-Tammann equation that I told you earlier, where 1/d is the fragility, which tells you about these cooperatively rearranging regions, that is the heterogeneous dynamics, and phi c is the critical volume fraction, which is the volume fraction at which the viscosity shows an apparent divergence. And we see, as you can see here, okay, that both the fragility as well as the critical volume fraction at which the viscosity diverges, they both increase as you increase the polydispersity. That's because your dynamics are becoming more heterogeneous as you increase polydispersity, plus there is a decoupling of the dynamics between the big and the small particles. The big particles are entering an arrested state while the small particles can still move around, and that completely changes the packing behavior. I'm done. But one thing that I'd like to mention is that this is still an ongoing work. So right now we are basically looking at, we are using a technique called Fourier transform rheology, where we apply a sinusoidal perturbation and we look at the stress response at the next higher harmonic, which is the 3 omega stress response, and we are using this to quantify the intrinsic nonlinearities in the sample, and we hope to be able to relate it to our fragility data. So I would like to thank these people and thank you for your attention.
There is time for maybe one question.
Not really. So everything here is, exactly what any theory for hard sphere glasses would tell you. However, none of this has been experimentally verified because of the challenges in making this large polydispersity range. No, we have, yeah, I know all the work, but we don't see all that.
How the fragility depends on the polydispersity.
Yes. So there have been, for instance, theoretical work by Zaccarelli and Poon, where they showed that for hard sphere materials, hard sphere suspensions, the glass transition gets smeared out. It gets shifted to a higher volume fraction. We see similar stuff, except that for us, we have an effective volume fraction and not a, the regular volume fraction.